Hello and welcome to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. My name is Mitch Austin, and I'm usually the host, but today I'm going to be the guest of the show. And on this show, we discuss people's defining moments and the lesson or blessing they got from those experiences. This show came out of a program that I teach called Rise and Speak, where I help people look at their life, or what I call their mess, and make it their message. And we journey over 7 weeks putting this message together and then performing it in front of a live audience. The next class that's going to happen is going to be an online class September 14th from 4 to 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. So if you're interested in this, we have a link where you can register. You can click on the link and register, or just reach out to me if you have any questions about the program and want to get involved. Also, I'm going to be in Phoenix September 9th with Sofa Sundays and Reverend Jeannie. We're going to be doing a show on Sunday, and then Saturday night, the Saturday before, we're going to do a Taming Your Inner Critic workshop there in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you want more information, feel free to reach out to me. So those are the announcements I have, and I am so grateful to have Reverend Renée Leboa as the host, asking me questions today. Thank you so much, Reverend Renée. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited. Are you ready to go?
I think I am. If not,
all right. Well, hey guys, I'm very honored to be here with you guys, and I'm excited to tell you about Mitch. Mitch is an amazing human being, and I have been honored to get to know him deeper, and I consider him a dear friend. So let me tell you about him. He was raised in the science of mind philosophy, and he's been a practitioner since 2012. He speaks all over the place. He's now currently in his practice of getting his ministerial license, and I know that the world's going to be blessed by that. Let me tell you about him. Mitch formed a Speak, Teach, Inspired, class, or I guess it's a workshop, spiritual counseling, the Rise and Speak Academy, and other self-improvement classes such as Taming Your Inner Critic, which I have been a witness to, Empowered Communication for Spiritual People, and Eat, Pray, Love. He also had the Rise and Speak. I was a witness for his class, absolutely transformative. And if you get a chance to be a part of one of his classes, please do so. Mitch is a member of the Imani Center, and he is on the Ministerial Council. He is a member of the affiliated New Thought Network, and began his weekly show, which we're on right now, with the New Thought Media Network in July. And this show is called Change Your Story, Change Your Life. Mitch's calling is to help others live a more authentic, healthy, and spiritually aligned life. Yes. And there's so much more that we just can't fit into words. So, Mitch, thank you. This is an awesome opportunity. I do believe that one of your other guests, Reverend Shay, suggested that you be interviewed, and I see that she's on. So she says, "Hey, Revs, hi, hun."
Hey, Shay.
So let's just get into it. Okay. So I wanted to ask you a few questions. You shared with me last week some of your experience growing up. And the one thing that I think I want to start off with is the story about your mom. I understand that she was, in essence, your first practitioner.
Yeah, my mom was my first spiritual teacher. She was actually raised Catholic and then discovered a Science of Mind center in Phoenix when I was 6 years old. And I had never been to a church until she discovered this center. And it was the first church I went to was a Science of Mind church. And it was also the first time I ever spoke publicly was at that church. They had me do a reading as part of the holiday. So it's kind of interesting, full circle unfolding. But my mother made me live these principles. And when you're a child, you don't know. You don't know life's supposed to be any other way. So I'd come to her with a problem and she'd go, if there's a will, there's a way. You know, or I come to her with something else. She'd go, mind over matter, you know, and all of these little statements that she just expected that I would live that. And as a result, I've encountered a lot of success that if you looked at the odds, I probably shouldn't have achieved. But it was due to these teachings and living these teachings, which she demonstrated as well, that have made the difference in my life.
Tell me about your relationship with her, other than the teaching, and how she has been an inspiration for where you are now.
Yeah, my mom she actually survived World War II.
Mhm.
She was on her own at 14. She came to America through Ellis Island, and English was her second language. And she had me here in the States. But she was really a very fiery woman. She didn't really let anything hold her back, even though she had a lot of health issues. But it ended up, we left my dad when I was 7. It was kind of her and me against the world, kind of thing. And we were very close. We could finish each other's sentences. When I was a kid, she would call me home just by thinking about me. That was her way to do it. And I remember I would just go, oh, I got to go home now. And I would just go home and I would walk through the door, 10 minutes later. So we were very blessed to have a close relationship. It was not an easy relationship,
Mm.
but we were able to get through a lot of things. And towards the end of her life, we were extremely close. Yeah.
Extremely close. When did she pass?
She made her transition in November of 2007. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I know that we're gonna get to this later, and we're gonna talk about your transgender story and journey. Was
yeah.
she part of that? Was she instrumental, and how did she support you through that?
Well, it's interesting because, one of the questions people often wanna know about, fun fact that I am a transgender man. So some people in the audience may not know that. I was born into a female body. And at the age of 43, I made the decision to transition my gender expression because it was more in alignment with how I moved through the world and how I knew myself to be. And people go, well, how far back did you know? And I can remember trying to have a conversation with my mother at the age of like 5, asking, why wasn't I born a boy? I was sliding in the mud, climbing trees, playing with lizards. Like there wasn't much, that was really indicating girl. And, she should have known. Like, I remember when she had given me this present and it was around this age. And she had saved up green stamps back then, which was, she had to save a lot of green stamps. You go to the
Uh,
grocery store, you get these little stamps, and she traded them in to get me a gift. And she was so excited. And she called me over, and my birth name was Michelle. And she's like, Michelle, I've got you a present. And I walk up to it, and it's a baby buggy. And I'm so excited, and she's excited. And I look in there and I take the baby, I throw it out, I jump in it, try to ride it like a go-kart. It collapses down. She's disappointed. I'm disappointed. And for 2 completely different reasons. So, there were clues. I had, and when I asked her this question, I might as well have asked, why was the sky blue? There was no real consciousness around this kind of thing when I was growing up. So I kind of got the undertones of like, this wasn't okay to ask. Like, nobody wanted to talk about this. So I just kind of moved on and tried to do the best I could do.
was she, part of your transition journey? Was she
Um,
still
no, she wasn't. Actually, what happened was later in life, around my late 30s, a lot of documentaries started to come out around transitioning, and I couldn't stop watching them. Literally, I could not stop watching them. And I was starting to reconnect with what I knew so long ago, that those parts that I had pushed down. And I tried to have a conversation with her. I might as well have again asked, why is the sky blue?
Mhm,
But what I also recognized at this point in her journey, she was so sick. Like, I didn't know how much longer I was going to have her.
mhm.
And I didn't want to take her daughter away from her. Like, I wanted her to be happy, and if she was happy, I was happy, and I didn't wanna put that on her. She would have accepted it, but it would have really been very stressful, and she didn't need that, so.
Do you think that your spiritual experience or your spiritual expression has changed since you transgendered? Has it affected it in a more positive way? Not to use a pun, but have you, quote unquote, did you come out spiritually in a different way?
Um, well, here's what I will say is true for my experience, and of course I can only speak to me, and and I'm going to jump in a second. I do want to acknowledge some people I invited to come today. Kathy's in the house, Leah, Eileen, thank you so much, Shay, Nicole. Just really appreciate people showing up live to hear the show and to hear my story.
Mhm.
So here's what I will say. When you are unauthentic in one part of your life, which I was, people didn't get to see me or know this about me. I was unauthentic in other areas.
Mm.
And it's almost like a shoe when the shoelace gets loose, when your association with your authenticity gets loose, like things start flying off. And that's what happened is I ended up being so out of integrity with who I was, how I was showing up, the work I was doing, the relationship I was in, how I was managing my money, like none of it was me.
Mhm.
And that created a major crisis. In fact, it almost had me checking out of the planet. I got so sick. My organs were shutting down. I was septic. They didn't know if I was going to make it. And that was a huge turning point for me. That's when I really had to look at things I didn't want to see. And it started with I was in a job I hated and I thought that was it. And I left. And then after I left that, I started to do some healing and reflection. And that's when I stepped into exploring my gender dysphoria. Because what became clear to me is nobody saw me. Nobody. And that's not any kind of life.
We see you. We see you, and I hear you, and I know you, and I'm so excited to have you speak about all this. And I do want to ask you, was there a specific moment, I would say a pain point in your life that you had no other choice but to make the decision to become your authentic self?
So there's a couple defining moments that were important in this unfolding. And the first one was really feeling the pain of not being seen. And so I had fallen in love with a woman. We're good friends now, but I'd fallen madly in love, the rose colored glasses, went all the way to Canada to see her, middle of Canada, nowhere. And we had kind of a long distance relationship until she sent me a Dear John email.
Ooh,
And in the email, she explained to me that she had been seeing a cisgendered, which cis means somebody who's born with male, their gender parts, and they relate to them. So he was born male. He identified as male. So she was, unbeknownst to me, seeing a cisgendered male. And in her email, she said she would marry me in a heartbeat if I was a man.
ah, it must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, that hurt me in a place where I couldn't ignore it. And I knew it wasn't just about the betrayal. There was something else going on there, and I knew I just couldn't do this anymore, and I had to figure it out, and that's when I started the journey. That's when I started to, get some help. I went to a support group. I, got some more information, and then I lived, because part of the protocol is you live as the gender you know yourself to be. So I cut my hair, I bound my chest, I wore 100% man's clothes, which I normally did anyhow. But everyone was sirring me until I opened my mouth because I had a female voice, and then people were just confused. Um, and I did this in a 2-week period when I didn't have any work because I was contracted for a city and I was running commissions. I was working with council. I was very high profile. So I had this 2-week time period during the holidays where I didn't have to go in. And then what happened was it was time for me to go back to work. And I very clearly remember holding up my bra and just looking at it and going, "Mm, I can't put this on. I cannot. I cannot." And so I didn't, and I wrapped everything up, and I'm sure when I got there, people wondered, what was going on. Nobody knew. Nobody knew that I was on this journey, and that was a huge defining moment because that was the moment where it wasn't just trying it out. that was the moment where this is going to move forward. And I didn't know how to do that. It felt impossible. It felt huge. Like, how was I going to tell the city manager and my 9-member council and my staff and all the groups I work with, and will they keep my contract? Unemployment is extremely high with
Right.
people when they transition. It's upwards of 60 to 70% lose their jobs.
Right.
They could have canceled my contract. So there was a lot of fear and uncertainty, but I knew I couldn't go back to the old life at that point.
I
Yeah.
love the truth in that, because there comes a point to where it's more painful to stay in the pod than it is to come out. It's almost like you outgrow your shoes. They no longer fit and you can't go back. Correct. So I know that we're coming up on a little break, but before we go to break, I want to ask you, what is the most proud moment of this period of time when you made your transition? It was after your mom passed, and here you are, really upside down in your entire life to step out into your authenticity. What was that defining moment?
Oh, I guess here's what I will say. That's true from my experience is people know who we are. Like, who we are speaks so much louder than our words or
Mhm.
even our gender expression. And as I was doing this on the job, people showed up for me.
Mm.
People supported me. People, like, shielded me. There was one moment in the city managers, they have a department heads meeting, where the police chief turned to the public works director and said, "You tell your people, if anyone messes with Michelle, I'll be watching." Like, he knew there were some people there who
Mhm.
might really try to do something. He didn't have to do that, you know? So I guess I'm just grateful that I showed up in a way that people wanted to support me. And if there was any pride in that, I guess that, I was doing good.
We are getting ready for a break. And so I want you to think on this. If your life was a book, what would be the title of that book?
Okay, I got one for you. Yeah,
Okay.
make sure you come back. We're gonna have
Okay,
about a
great.
2-minute video. Sounds good.
As an audience member, I was struck by how well prepared these new speakers were.
Dig into the pivotal moments in your story, in your life, and then express them, process them in a way to where you can share them with others and really share in a meaningful way for you and for those who are hearing your story and things that really matter to you and matter to the world.
I saw in myself and in my cohort, oh my God, such wonderful, wonderful breakthroughs, such wonderful healing. And that is the blessing of Mitch Austin's class. So go ahead and sign up.
All right, we're back. Before I jump into the book title, because I really want to get to this, there is one more thing I want to add that I really want people to know.
Okay.
A lot of times people think that the big gift in my transition was I get to live authentically, and that is a gift. That is a huge gift. And I wouldn't be doing this work. You wouldn't be seeing me. I wouldn't be on stages. I wouldn't be coaching or teaching or doing any of the wonderful work I get a chance to do in the world if I hadn't made this journey. Because you can't tell people to live authentically and trust the divine, and then you're not living it, right? But here was the bigger gift, actually, is when I saw people rising up and supporting me, it healed me in a way I didn't know I needed to be healed. Um, Part of the journey was, telling people, and everybody that I told, every 9-member commissioner, all of them embraced it. I had to pull in the people that I work closely with, and every one of them said the same thing at the end that on the work. They said, "Who's going to tell Julie?" And you got to understand, Julie was like this little school teacher. She was, she was very naive about some things, and she had strong opinions. She was against gay marriage. Like everyone was really worried. Like, how was she going to take this? And I always imagined they drew straws in the back room, like, who's going to tell Julie, right? And I knew exactly when she knew, because I was standing at the front counter and I hear this shuffling coming down the hall, tap, 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 tap. And I look, and it's Julie, and she's coming right at me. Her arms are wide open and she's wrapping them around me. She goes, "I'm so happy for you." I'm like, I guess she knows. And it was in that moment that I appreciated that, and I didn't up until this moment, that people have a great capacity to love us, even if they don't always understand our journey,
Mhm.
and that I could trust people. And I didn't. I didn't up until that point. And the kind of trust I didn't even know existed in the world for people I barely knew. And that changed me, that healed me, and that has actually helped me do the work that I do today. So
Let's talk about the title of your book.
I am writing a book, actually. It's called Winning Ugly.
I don't love that.
Unconventional Strategies for Uncommon Success. I feel like the metaphysical bumblebee of the universe. The bumblebee, according to aeronautics science, isn't supposed to be able to fly because its wings are too small and its bodies are too big. There was a lot of things I shouldn't have been able to succeed in. For instance, I have my degree in psychology from a 4-year college. And what I didn't understand until some years after I graduated, that there's something called the education gap. And what happened is some educators got together and said, why do some of the students given the same education go to college, and why do some not go to college or get there and not graduate? So they did this big study, and what they found out was students who had parents who didn't graduate college, mine didn't graduate middle school because of different life situations. English was their second language. My mom was born in Europe. English was her second language, and come from a lower socioeconomic background. We were poor. I mean, that's just what it was. And if you were to throw in other factors, alcoholic family and the instability, I had by the odds, by this study, a 2% chance of graduating college. 2%. And I firmly believe, and nobody ever told me that it was against the odds, right? Nobody ever told me I shouldn't succeed. Like, and there were some, counselors, well-meaning counselors, who tried to direct me to trade school, but I needed to get out of my house. I had other plans. And I was taught, mind over matter.
Mhm.
There's a will, there's a way. So that's how I moved through my world. And so I was having successes I didn't know I should have. And I learned a lot of approaches, tools, thinking strategies that people don't talk about in the world. And so I'm putting them into this book, and it's part autobiographical and metaphysical.
So all of this, your journey brought you to the work that you're doing now on the global scale. And I say global because it may just be in this country now, but I have been witness to the work you're doing, and I do really think that it's cutting edge, spiritually cutting edge and psychologically cutting edge. And I do believe that it's going to go farther than either one of us have a possibility of knowing. Just like you say, out of no thing a way is made. And so tell me what brought you to create these programs that really are life changing, especially the Rise Up and Speak. Let's talk about changing your story.
Yeah. So I have a passion to speak. That's in my heart. And it's been in my heart for quite some time. And I actually, before my transition, wanted to get into public speaking, but I could never see myself up on stage because that isn't who I was. And so now that I transitioned, I wanted to get into more speaking. And in fact, I still want to do a TED Talk. I have a keynote that I've put together on what's behind all the isms, which is our tendency to other one another, right? Because there's a long list of isms. And so that's just part of what's coming out of this. But, you know, I was wanting to do a TED Talk, and I thought, well, it's really hard to get on TED Talk stages.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, well, what if I just get a group together and I work with people, help them, with their speaking skills, and we just put on our own thing. We just do our own thing. That's where it came from. Mind over matter, will there's a way. And I had this vision. I was falling asleep, that time before you're asleep and you're awake. And I clearly saw a stage with a banner, and I was calling it CSAX, which is Center for Spiritual Awareness X, which was a play on TEDx.
I love it.
And people up there connecting with their hearts and their stories, and feeling the change and the shift in the audience, because I have felt that,
Mhm.
and there's nothing like it. And a lot of times people say, well, I can never get up there and do that. Here's what I know. And this is what I teach, and it has been true. 95% of the people that come into my program do the talk. 95, right? Biggest fear. And this is why. We will do things for other people we won't do for ourselves. And when people connect with the love, hope, and transformation that their story can bring even just one person, it becomes a mission. You become pulled or called to give your medicine to the world.
Mhm.
Because if we don't bring the medicine, if we don't bring the light, there won't be any. And that's in part why I'm so transparent about being transgender. I could be stealth. I could not tell anybody, and people generally wouldn't ever figure it out,
Mhm.
right? And there actually is a reason why I decided to do that.
I love it. So when I first met you, it was at a conference, and I loved. You'll hear more about this story later in another show, I'm sure. But I kind of energetically attacked him because there was this energy about him that I know that you can see right here. And he probably thought I was a kook, but there was something about him, and he had said at the lunch table something about taming your inner critic, and I happen to have an inner critic who's busy all the time. And I walked up to him and I said, I think I would like to work with you in regards to the taming the inner critic. And it was so profound. He said, well, what would you do if you could tame your inner critic? And my answer was everything. And so the work that you're doing with that as well, the counseling and meeting with people and mentoring them, is making a big difference. I know it made a big difference in my life. I stepped out in an
Mm.
area that, I don't know why it felt so scary, but I did. So tell me how that is affecting you as the work you're doing is affecting other people.
Yeah, taming your inner critic. It was an idea that came to me about 8-9 years ago when I was thinking about what was going on with my parents' relationship, because they loved each other. Their inner children just oozed out all over each other, right? It was a lot of pain there. And what I realized is their internal dialogue was driving it. Because if you have a strong internal critic, it becomes your external critic. And I was seeing that pain, and I was feeling my own internal judgment and fear. And I thought, gosh, somebody needs to talk about this. And that started really the journey of putting the workshop together over time, and my own education and my own taking on my own inner critic, and deepening my understanding and mastery. And it's still there for me. Like, it tries to sabotage new things that I try to do, and I've gotten better and better at quieting it. Thus, all the things that I'm able to kind of step out a new show and, do different things. Um, but our inner critic can be our biggest dream killer. And then we take our magic, our genius, our light to the grave. And I think that's a huge disservice to humanity. So I was really on a mission to help people get some tools, understanding, and some distance between that voice, and start rise up that inner champion, because we have that too inside of us. and how to navigate that in a way that's kinder, right? Kinder to ourselves, gentler. And when we're kinder and gentler to ourselves, we can be kinder and gentler to each other. And now we're reading lips.
Hello. When I worked with you, the one thing I did notice was your gentleness, your insightfulness, and your ability to see past the words. I'm talking away and telling you this little story, and you just zoom right in to really the core issue. And I found that to be so helpful to just cut right through to it. And so you are really, really good at the work that you do. Um, I also want you to talk about your new program, Eat, Pray, Live, based
Uh,
on your health journey.
oh,
So,
wow. Yeah. Yeah. Whew.
mhm,
So about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I had a health condition pop up that um, doctors couldn't diagnose. I had migraines. I had brain fog so bad I couldn't cook because I was leaving burners on. I was leaving groceries in the car. The leg muscles would twitch uncontrollably. I couldn't walk but 30 feet and I'd break out into a sweat. I was weak. Nobody knew what was going on. All they could say is my inflammation markers were through the roof. And I had some things happen at work, and when I met with a neurologist, he said, "Oh, well, this seems like a trauma response," and I thought he was full of it. Turns out I think he was right, but I didn't know it at the time, and I began to wonder, like, is this gonna be my life? Am I gonna go on disability? Like, I couldn't function. And then I remembered our teaching, there's a power for good and we can use it.
mhm,
Mind over matter. If there's a will, there's a way, and so I said, "You know what? I'm gonna heal this, even if I don't know how."
mhm.
And I said, "God, it's you and I." And so I get up and I walk my 20 feet and then I quit the sugar. I'm like, I'm all in. I quit the sugar. I quit the flour. I started reading. I put it out there. I prayed. And when you pray, the book shows up, the
Mhm.
resource shows up. I had an energy healer I went to. She goes, "Well, how motivated are you to heal yourself?" And I said, "Look, if you told me to eat long grass right now, I'd go out and do it. I would." Right? I had no limits on what I would do to step into my healing, because what I kept thinking as I was walking those 20 feet is I had music inside me I hadn't given yet.
Mm,
This wasn't okay, so I gotta figure this out. And, little by little, as these resources started popping up and I worked with intermittent fasting, and that was really where a big corner turned for me. I learned that there's so many things we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And I was mind blown about the things that nobody knows about that make a huge difference on our mind, body, and spirit whole being. And I thought, I got to start teaching people this. I got to start teaching people that table salt is toxic and that mineralized salt actually helps lower blood pressure. Like, I got to teach people about earthing, that we're electrical beings and we need our bodies recharged, and just standing on the earth does that, and I got to teach people about how unforgiveness actually creates molecules in our body that inflame our body and lead to disease. Just unforgiveness,
mhm,
like all of these connections. And so I put all of this into a program called Eat, Pray, Live. And the program is designed to meet people where they're at. Because here's what I believe: two things. We can have the best program in the world, but if we can't execute it, like it's too much for us, it doesn't fit with where we're at, we're not going to do it. We could willpower it for a while, but we're not going to make the lifestyle shifts. So I put together a program that meets people where they're at so they can start this journey of wholeness wherever they're at. And the second thing is, and this is the most important thing, is you can have all the money, you can have all the resources, you can have the perfect plan for your dream, your up leveling, whatever it is. But if you don't have the energy to do it,
mhm.
not going to do it. And I knew this because I didn't have any energy. I had plans. I couldn't do it. And when I started my morning routine and implementing all these things I was learning, I have energy through the roof. I can go 16 hours, and I couldn't even do that when I was in my 40s, right? The brain fog cleared up. I healed my fatty liver. I cured my high blood pressure. I lost 40 pounds. Um, And my life is being a reflection of this now. So I can't not teach it. So if this speaks to you, please let me help you with this journey, because there is an answer.
So you just mentioned the mind, body, spirit connection, which we all know that, what we think and what we feel, unhealed beliefs, trauma, it all manifests in our body and can cause disease. So how did forgiveness play a role in this process that you just went through?
Well, the trauma thing, right? So I did make the connection that I had a trauma trigger happen at work, and it left me in a state of fight or flight.
Mm.
And this was connected to the trauma I'd had as a child that was unresolved. And our issues live in our tissues. And I didn't want to believe that, right? Because I'm going to fix this, right? I'm that person. I'm going to fix this. This isn't going to beat me down. This isn't going to get the better of me, right? I thought that was done. But what I realized is it wasn't. And I had to forgive myself for not facing some of the trauma healing journey I still needed to go on. So there was a self-forgiveness component that I needed to engage in, and to get out of denial that there was still more trauma healing to do. And it's okay for us to say that. It's okay to admit that. And it's not even just okay. It's healing. It's healing. And I think it's necessary for a lot of our journeys, whether, it's whatever kind of trauma. I think if you live long enough, you've experienced something, right? And to truly release it, you have to own it first. So I own 100% responsibility of healing that. So Eileen says, Mitch is a great partner to work with. I love working. Oh, thank you, Eileen.
I agree.
I love working with you.
Thank you. Love this eat, pray, live. That's what Shay says. Me too. I want to get in on that.
Absolutely.
Forgiveness is a word that we all hear. It's a great concept, and yet even harder to implement. So what were the steps you took? Can you share a little bit about how did you actually go about not just forgiving yourself, but forgiving those who in your life may have been a participant in your journey of pain, I guess?
Yeah. So my father was kind of my teacher, but not in a way that anyone would ever typically sign up for, right? He was a severe alcoholic. And I come to find out that he suffered from something I didn't even know existed, and I'll share it here because I think people need to know it exists. It was sadistic personality disorder is part of his mental unwellness. And that's a situation where someone gets pleasure by exerting their power over someone who's powerless. And he would do those things. And so to me, my father, when we left at 7, was just this scary, monstrous figure that I didn't know. And what would happen later on in life, I thought I had escaped addiction, but I hadn't. And I remember very clearly being in my backyard reflecting on my life. I was showing up as somebody I didn't even recognize. The kind of anger and the decisions I was making, I was a mess. And I was in my own personal hell because of it. And then I thought about my father. What kind of hell was he in with his addictions? With having had to fight in the war as a Marine Raider and kill people without making a sound. Like, he had his own personal hell going on. And it wasn't personal, the things that he did. He was broken. And he had no help. When people came back from the war then, they didn't have Wounded Warrior. They didn't have anything except booze, really,
Right.
and the drinking buddies. So I began to think about his pain, and I began to recognize that I couldn't forgive myself because a piece of him lived in me until I forgave him. And I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
He was long dead, and I didn't really know much about forgiveness principles, but I did know how to pray. And I did the God help me prayer. Help me forgive my father. I'm ready. And what happened after that was nothing short of, Spirit's hand leading me down the road. I met with my cousin a few months later. She just happened to pull out all the pictures of the family, pictures of my dad I hadn't seen. My dad was her favorite uncle. She loved him, and she had all these great stories. And I'm like, well, that wasn't my experience. And what she told me was there was a different version of him, but after the war, the family noticed that it had changed him.
Right.
And I gained understanding. It didn't change what happened, but I now had an adult view of my father, not a 7-year-old view. And one of the pictures she gave me is the last picture before he died. He had shrunk a few inches. He had lost his 2 front teeth. He's smiling real big. He's just this little old man. Couldn't hurt a fly. And that's who my father is to me now. It's all gone. Every bit of it. Every bit of fear, judgment, it's all gone. I love my father. And that isn't anything I knew how to make happen, but I could make welcome because I was willing. And I think when we're really willing and we're really letting go and turning that over, that's when it can come in. That's when it can come in really deep. And that was huge. That was huge for my healing as well.
Thank you. I know we need to go to a little break here, a little commercial break. And so stay tuned. I have so many more questions for Mitch. And thanks for everybody who's tuning in. Come back. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Wish we'd all stop acting like we're strangers if we could see underneath. We are one family, and it don't matter where you come from. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. One love, one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one. What if we could rise?
Hi, welcome back. We're talking to Mitch Austin on his show, and I'm Reverend Renée Leboa. Thanks for tuning in. We've been asking Mitch some personal questions about his life, and I want to continue on with those questions. And the first one I want to ask is, what inspired you to do this show, and where do you see it going?
Oh, I love that question. Well, first off, I want to say, hopefully what I've been sharing with you has been inspirational and moving for you, right? Because we live in stories, we think in stories, we move in story. And what I noticed when I was doing the Rise and Speak and people were witnessing each other's defining moments and stories, they were getting healed. They were getting inspired. They were getting uplifted and educated. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. I remember I had a student once who was talking about a long-term friendship he had that ended badly, and he didn't realize his friend was a narcissist. He didn't even know what a narcissist was. And that healed him in such a way. I had another woman who participated in the program, and she was able to admit some things she'd never admitted to anybody. And she said, I got more healing from this program than $10,000 worth of counseling. So I was witnessing, and the audience would come up to me after performances. This one woman said, I was so high listening to these stories. I knew it wasn't heaven, but it had to be in the same zip code. Like, I know how powerful sharing our journey is. And I felt like this show could do a deep dive in different subjects and areas for people to be inspired and to be uplifted and transformed.
It's really neat. You have a whole lineup of people that are going to come on here with all kinds of different backgrounds, their ministry, how they show up on the planet is different and wonderful. I can't wait to see what you pull out next. I do see here that we have a question from Leah Eldridge, and she asks the question, after the forgiveness, do the old hurts still show up? And I'll add to that. And
Yeah.
how do you address that?
And how do I address that? Well, our issues live in our tissues. And for me, the trauma still lives in my body, literally. Like I can't go into a memory of it without something happening to my body,
Mhm.
losing consciousness or not being able to function. So there's that piece. But that piece to me isn't about my father. He didn't come in trying to rewire my nervous system, right? Like it's, so I look at that as two separate things. I just have no vibration of judgment around my father anymore. None. It's if you could call it miraculous, you could call it divine intervention, but there just isn't. I know he loved me. I mean, I have pictures of him holding me as a baby. Like I knew it was there. He just didn't have the capacity while he was on the planet to show it in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just let everything go. So for me, it's just not there. But the echo of the trauma is.
Right.
And so I get to heal that.
It says, if it's still showing up, is it still more, or is there still more forgiving to do?
There's forgiveness of self because as I unpack, trauma can be a very insidious thing and it can have lots of tentacles. And I'm still learning about how trauma shows up, even though it was many years ago, and how sometimes I've been my own abuser. And that's hard to admit. That pissed me off when I figured that out,
Yeah.
that I do my own self-neglect. What is that about, right? Because that's where I was conditioned. That's where my energy point was set. And now I actively embrace that and look to heal it. So it's definitely layers, right? But it's layers of healing, and forgiveness is one of those layers, right? At least for me, it is. But there's more to it.
Thank you for that question, Leah. It's a great question. I have a question about the mystical experience. So, a lot of times you hear about, oh, there was a defining moment. It was a mystical experience. I felt a cool air. I felt a warm hug. I felt an awakening. I felt a rush. What was that like for you? And did you have a mystical experience?
In which part? Any particular part?
I think during the awakening up to the next level, the transformation, the metamorphosis, was there that mystical experience, like a voice, a message, a feeling, a knowing that there was a new path and you were being led in a new direction?
Yeah, I've always had, I think, a very close relationship to spirit. And I think sometimes when you've had a lot of difficulty, particularly younger in life, you develop this kind of dialogue with spirit or God or higher power or something, right? And I always knew some things, right? Even though my mother and I were really close, I always knew that she wouldn't die in a hospital bed, that I'd be the one to find her. Like I knew things. I knew after, her transitioning was part of my next level of life. Like these downloads would just come down. In fact, after she died, I had another message come in and it said, you're going to get really sick, but it's going to be okay. And 3 months later is when I ended up at the hospital, organs shutting down. Like I have been on this walk with spirit, always just kind of, here you go. Here you go. You're, here's what's going to happen, going out before me or giving me information I need as I step through, some difficult things in life. So the mystical has always been there. And in particular, after my mother died, it was a very dark time for me. God and I had it out. And I said, this is cruel. You put us in a body. We love these people. They leave. It hurts. It sucks. And then we die. What is the point? Right? Just having that. And I was really depressed. I think I was probably clinically depressed. And I remember one day, I didn't understand why we were here. It made no sense to me. Nothing seemed appealing to me. All the color ran out of my world. Like I didn't get it. Why I'm here. Why should I even be here? And one day in the middle of the day, I decided just to go to bed. And like it was 3 p.m. and I did weird things. I took down my vision board. I was just in this state.
Mhm.
And I laid down to go to bed, and I didn't really care if I woke up or not. And I wasn't doing anything to make that happen. But I'm like, look, I'm really okay if I don't wake up. And then I was in that state again between, sleep and awake, that theta state. And all of a sudden I found myself in this place. There was nothing there. There was nothing visually there. But I felt all this joy, like joy off the charts. And I said, where am I? And what I got was, I'm in the place before souls incarnate into a body. That
Mm.
there's an experience you can have in a body that you can't have when you're in spirit. The way you see a sunset, holding somebody's hand, having a wonderful meal, right? That this body was a gift, and they were so excited to get one.
Mm.
And what I'll tell you is when I woke up, it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, but something in me shifted just a little bit to start connecting with that idea and to start healing with my relationship with being here, right? And yeah, so that was one of my major mystical experiences. That was a huge healing for me.
I love it how we think a mystical experience is supposed to be, unicorns and rainbow dust and beautiful breeze and lavenders everywhere. So if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would that be?
Just that, it sounds trite, but everything's going to work out, and that your life is going to be really great. It's going to be greater than you can imagine. And you're going to get so much help along the way. And you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid.
You said something to me the other day. I'd asked you a question, and you said to me, see the end, keep the end in mind.
Start with the end in mind.
Start with the end in mind. And that was really powerful for me. So I'm going to ask you that question in regards to your ministry, in regards to your show and the work and the programs that you're doing. What is the end in mind? Where do you want this to go?
So there's only one thing I'm really attached to, and that is my last breath.
Mm.
And so my philosophy of everything that I do, I want to leave everything I have to give the world out into the world. Like, I want to just be empty. I want my last breath to feel like I did a good job, that I loved courageously, that I gave generously, that whatever gifts I had, that I put them out there with everything that I have. And that last breath is peaceful and it feels like I did a good job. That's it.
I can already see that will be the truth of you. If you were to give us a message for those of us who sometimes still live with our inner critic, and we're having that daily conversation with her, mine is very busy. What would be that message that you would give right here, right now, for those who are still struggling with that first step into the courageous step through fear?
Well, the inner critic isn't the enemy. It's a piece of you that wants to take care of you, but its version of safe is pretty limited,
Mhm.
or it's pretty torturous. Only do what I tell you to do and nothing else, right? Or don't take a risk because of what people might think and say. Imposter syndrome is a big deal. And I was doing a workshop at the SOAR conference, a rogue workshop, an underground workshop. I had a few people around the table when we were doing it. And this one woman had expressed, this imposter syndrome that, she worries about what other people think, and then they'll judge her, and then it'll affect her reputation. And I simply turned to her and I said, well, who are you? Are you the judgments of other people? And she goes, well, no, I'm a piece of spirit. I said, okay, so when is spirit ever not enough? Because that's who we really are. right? And when we embrace who we really are, we step into our power, because who we really are is limitless power, limitless love, limitless intelligence, wisdom, knowing. When we stand on that, the inner critic has no jurisdiction.
I like that. No jurisdiction. That's beautiful. So, any dreams, any challenges that you want to like tackle? Actually, I don't like the challenges part. What dreams do you still have?
I want to get on a TED Talk stage
Woo-hoo! I support that. I see that.
and talk about the power of stories and represent all the brave people who've taken my program, because I feel a certain responsibility to carry their heart, their love, and their light into the world in a higher way. And to get us talking, can we please take off the mask? Can we please share our challenges and what we're going through, and the light of hope we all carry? We all carry it.
Mm.
But we got to be willing to be vulnerable. We got to be willing to be seen. And that means trusting. And I
Yep.
guarantee you, when you do it, it'll change you in a really good way.
It will change it. And just having you in my tribe, someone said here on the comments, they're so blessed to have you in their tribe. And it is a tribe. We are a global tribe, right?
True.
I see that we're coming to the end of our time together, and I just want to turn it back over to you. And what do you see in your future? What's coming up?
Well, I am in my own business now, Speak, Teach, Inspire, and it's a culmination of the public speaking I do. I'm actually picking up more and more spiritual centers. So if I can support your center, please reach out to me. I would love to do that. I'm willing to travel and whatnot. If you want to bring Rise and Speak to your community or center, I can do that as well. So I'm just really wanting to get more expanded, because this is my full-time gig. Right. So I need a little more to do. And so there's that. And I also want to mention, I talked about my transgender journey, and I know that this subject is still really new to a lot of people and can be really challenging. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you,
Love
Eileen.
you too. If you know somebody who's struggling with this subject, you can always use my name. You can refer people to me. I am committed to helping people with this journey, whether you have someone in your family who's making this change, or somebody who needs this support. Please have them come to my website or email me. I am more than happy to do that. That's important.
Do you have any new shows that you might be creating?
Well, there might be, Miss Renée Leboa. We're thinking about doing a show together. Are we kind of good? We have good energy, don't we? Isn't this good? We're thinking about doing a spiritual variety show. So if you think that's cool, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be like these spiritual rebels, and there'll be a lot of laughter and fun and connection and deep thought about some things that we maybe don't always look at. So I'm excited. We're thinking about maybe the new year popping that in. So
yeah, we're both excited. So let me see if there's any more questions that I can come up with in our last few minutes. Any heroes in your life? Anybody has inspired you to keep walking this path or to expand your path?
All the people that have come before, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I was the kid the village raised. And a lot of these people you wouldn't know, but they live in my heart. Coach Larkin, who signed me up for clinics and would just drive me, so many wonderful everyday people. And when we show up for each other, it makes a difference. It really does. Well, I know we're getting towards the end. We might have went over a minute here, but I want to thank everyone for showing up. Thank you for showing up live to the show. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. And I want to thank New Thought Media Network. Please donate so we can have more shows like this. I want to thank 18 Source Productions, and of course, the wonderful Reverend Renée Leboa. And tune in next week, 11 a.m. Until then, tell your story and shine your light. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching.